It's time to take your business to the next level, the boss level. These are the premier business owner strategies and successes being utilized by the industry's top talent today. Rock your business like a boss, a VO boss. Now let's welcome your host, Ann Ganguza.
Hey everyone, welcome to the VO Boss Podcast and the Balance Series. I'm your host, Ann Ganguza, and I am excited to bring back to the show, as always, the lovely and talented Erikka J. Hey, Erikka.
Hey, Ann. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's been a busy week. How about yourself?
Oh, yeah, definitely been busy and prepping for another busy one. So, as you know, I've got my corporate job, I've got my kids, my family, I'm pregnant, and, I've got voiceover, which is like,
Voiceover.
all in its own, a big old thing. And we've got a holiday coming up soon here.
Yeah.
So holidays, everybody likes to get their work in before everybody goes out. So I got tons of meetings and stuff and projects at the job. I've got tons of sessions next week for voiceover. And I am just really finding ways to balance it all because it's a lot.
Look, I know that when I had a corporate job and I was doing voiceover part-time, it was the hardest thing. As a matter of fact, whenever I talk to a student that comes to me, I'll just say it is very, very difficult to dedicate time to voiceover when you've got a full-time job and your career that you're already engaged in. And I look at you and I'm like, my gosh, because you've got the family on top of that and you're in IT just the way I was. So I know how crazy it was for me. I'd love to talk about how you balance your careers and be so successful at all of them and your family.
Yeah. I actually just a couple weeks ago or so talked to eVocation about this, different strategies and things. One of the biggest ones, and something that's kind of like a lesson from my corporate career, is prioritization, because sort of accepting and knowing that you can't do it all. And that's whether you have a job or not, even just being in VO. Probably not going to be able to get to every single audition, especially if you want to make sure that you get the jobs done and all of your marketing work and all of that. So being able to prioritize appropriately and know what's first to do.
All right. So when I know that, and I know you've got a number of agents and they're all vying for you, right? Especially when you're doing well. And I know you're on a really great success track and I'm so happy. I know what it's like when I can't do an audition for my agent. It's almost like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh no. And I feel bad. I feel guilty. And sometimes they'll write me and say, where is it?
Yeah.
And so how do you deal with that? That's got to be something.
Yeah.
How do you prioritize?
That's a great point. For me, definitely the ones for my agent are number one. I very rarely these days audition on Voice 123 where I am present, but I rarely am going on there to find jobs to audition for. It's more like if somebody DMs me, either for a job or for an audition, or I get one of those client invitations where they've specifically said, Erikka, we'd like for you to audition for this. And even those, they're last on my list. Agents, managers, theirs get number one. When I do have to kind of look at those and say, okay, I might need to prioritize, I got a ton of them today, I do want to make sure that it's the right audition for me. And I'm trusting 9 times out of 10, the ones they're sending me are great. But, if I'm really not sure, or if I'm not really feeling the script, or they kind of want it read 3 times and it's rather long, I might email and say, hey, I'm going to pass on this one. And they usually understand because I don't do it often. So that's how I prioritize that.
Well, I think you probably prioritize agents too. I mean, in my certain cases, I have agents that are more local to me in LA, and I have to prioritize those agents that are local and the ones that I'm booking with. There are some other agents that, how do I say it? They're not important. Right. It's just that I have agents that I have to prioritize them if they're more local to me, and they expect that.
Yeah,
as well.
Absolutely.
So
your mother agency, as they call it, that's
yes, exactly. Your mother agency. Yep, they do. They get dibs and they get priority. And so if there are 5 auditions that come out and one of them is from the mothership, if I can only do one, that's the one that gets it.
Yep. And you can look at things like the job you want to, for the rate, or if it's something like a category or a brand you've really been wanting to work for, that can help you with those prioritizations decisions as well. But definitely take care of your mother agency.
Now, you also go into work, right? You have to go into work, or are you working from home?
The only way I'm able to do this is because I'm full remote right now, and I have been for 2 years.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Because I know some IT, you have to be there because you physically have to be present to take care of equipment or something like that. But you can do everything from home. That, I think, is one advantage of the pandemic for people that have been working full time. If you have been kind of rehomed to a home office, I think that actually is a benefit for people who are looking to get into voiceover, because you can sneak away to your studio to do a 5 or 10 minute audition. That was something I did not have the luxury of doing when I worked in IT, because I had to be on site, on premise, even though a lot of my time I was doing remote work, but I also had to be there to physically turn machines on and off, or, install machines and that sort of thing. So I do think that is one of the biggest advantages from the pandemic. If you are now able to work from home, having a voiceover career as well is a lot more accessible.
Absolutely. And that was something that I brought up in my talk, is that yes, I fully recognize that not everybody has my position, and I feel very blessed that I'm able to work 100% from home. And even now, like my position, it's more like product management. So I'm in software. So thank goodness I don't have any hardware that I have to be physically present to manage. But now after the pandemic, there are an increasing amount of remote jobs. So it's not just necessarily me. It's like jobs that were not remote before. These companies are recognizing that they're able to retain their talent better if they're able to offer that sort of perk. And actually, a lot of people are more productive when they do their corporate jobs from home in the corporate work. So it definitely allows me the flexibility to come in and out of the booth. Like my desk is over there, my booth is here, and I just back and forth between meetings and sessions and auditions, and it's crazy. But
But here's an important session, though. How do you turn it off, right? You're at your home. So where's the family part of that and that family balance come in? How do you work with that? Because that's got to be tough.
Yeah. I think it's a couple things. For one, in the beginning, I was very, I'm already a workaholic. So
my name is Ann Ganguza, and I am a workaholic.
Hi, Ann. Welcome.
Yes. I'm right there with you.
So, I mean, they already knew that I was like that, but I was kind of an overdrive, and my family was like, hey, you need to chill, Erikka, So like I did have to find places to set boundaries. Like I mentioned that I had a recurring great client that had booked me for a Sunday once, and I did it that one time, but I said, for the future, I really don't do sessions on Sundays. And they were like, oh, okay. And it was great. So now I know that day is like set aside for myself,
my day too.
my family. Sundays, I generally don't do anything unless it's like huge. And I tell them, and I'm like, this is huge. And they're like, okay. So they have to be on board too, I think, is the big thing. Like they understand this industry. They've seen how hard I work. They know it gives me flexibility with other things. I was able to pay off my debt because of voiceover. So that helps us all. So having them on board and setting boundaries so that you do have some special time with them is really important.
I agree. The Sunday is my boundary. The workaholic in me is like 6 days a week. And you're right. Sometimes I work on Sunday, but only if I have to. And what's interesting is sometimes with my husband, if he has to travel for business and he's gone over the weekend, on Sundays, I may work and not feel guilty. Because if I end up having to work on a Sunday, I feel really bad because I'm like, I need to spend time with Jerry and the family and whatever else we're planning on doing, because we need to make plans as well. And I'm one of those people that I'm so planned ahead in my planner or in my calendar. If I don't block off on my calendar up to a year ahead, I will be scheduled with something. So again, busy is good, but sometimes busy isn't good. And so was there a time that you realized, I don't have the proper balance right now, and you need to reevaluate? And what was it that happened, and how did you readjust?
Oh, yeah. This was probably about maybe, even though we're still technically in the pandemic, but like midway, when it was like, all right, we know that this is the way of life for now. I had been just like throwing myself into so many workshops, and a lot of them were LA based. So, I'd be working all day, doing auditions, maybe cook dinner, and then, in a workshop till 1 a.m. I was exhausted. I was drained. I was burnt out. I could tell like I was less motivated to do auditions. Like I said, my boyfriend, my partner, he's just kind of like, you are doing too much, So other people kind of calling me out. And that's when I was just like, all right, these workshops are great. I'm enjoying learning, but, maybe I don't have to take every single one I see. Maybe I can just do a couple a month, And so that was kind of the turning point for me. And also I had developed to a point that I didn't need to keep doing them as much. I almost got like addicted to workshops at one point because I just loved learning and developing. But I'm like, also from an ROI perspective, am I spending too much money now on workshops and training where I'm already at this point? So that was another turning point to be able to say, all right, I need to spend more time on working and making the money and maybe
to reinvest.
Scale back some on the training. Yeah.
I think that's a good point to talk about, that point where you are evaluating the numbers. And I think it's important that when we get to the point in our career, you need to evaluate your numbers. numbers. I know a lot of people don't look at the numbers sometimes, and they're just like doing jobs, spending money, buying microphones, upping their home studio, but yet they haven't really looked at their numbers. And I think it's important that you look at your numbers. Where's your outgoing expenses and what's incoming, and where do you need to make adjustments? But I think having money to reinvest, I think you're probably at the point where you're being successful enough that you've forgotten to kind of figure out, oh, I need to pay the bills, or you've got that cushion, but you've also forgotten to look at your numbers to find out really what are you spending. And I think that's an important stop point in any career. You need to regularly evaluate the numbers incoming and outgoing so that you know when you can reinvest and when not to be. And in terms of like myself, I know myself when I don't have the right balance, and this is not balancing corporate career, but balancing my own career, when I'm too busy working too many hours and I start to get like panicky, where I'm like, oh my God, I just don't have enough time to finish this, and I've got to finish this and I can't stop. And I will start to have like panic attacks. And that's when I know that the balance has got to come back, because it's not healthy for me to be in that high, my blood pressure probably spikes.
Yeah, your body will tell you for sure.
Yeah. And so do you have certain days that you set? Do you have time limits? Do you say, I'm on the job from 9 to 5, or I have an hour for lunch, I've got an hour to do auditions? How do you split your time?
Yeah, so I think it does vary for me from day to day, because sometimes it might make sense for me to do a session at 12 when I know that I'm not going to have any meetings. There might be days where I have no meetings. So it's kind of more like, I have a project to work on my own time. And it's not necessarily that I have to be sitting in front of my computer for 8 hours. And I might be able to have some sessions during that day. I do build in some breaks. Like I make sure that like if I have, meetings from 1 to 4 and, sessions at some point, like I will set a boundary and be like, I'm not available at this time because I know I just need to breathe.
Yeah.
I need to get outside, get some air, eat.
I think mentally, for me, the performance, right? There's the business aspect, right? Where I'm doing accounting, I'm sending emails, I'm responding to clients. And then there's in the booth. And I think so much of what's in the booth is mental. And that takes time. Like you forget to give yourself grace and time to prepare for that or build that into your calendar. That's where I find that I am lax sometimes, because I'll be so exhausted after I'm doing all the other stuff that I get in the booth here and I'm like, oh God. And then what happens is I want to get through the audition quick, and I have to stop myself because that does me no favors in my performance. How do you deal with that in the booth? How do you get back that peace, that restoration?
Kind of reset.
Yeah. How do you reset to have that balance?
For me, getting fresh air is a huge one. Like I've been either sitting in meetings, or I've been in the booth, or I've been sitting at my desk doing invoicing and all the admin stuff that comes along with our business as well, right? And like I'll be like, all right, I need to get up. My butt hurts. I need to stand up. That tells me I've been in the chair too long.
Yep.
And these days I have to get up pretty frequently to go pee, so that helps. But I really do like try to get fresh air, and that's a good reset, because it literally getting the oxygen to my brain is like telling my brain you're okay and there's an abundance of air to breathe. And like that is something that I have learned. It tells your whole body relaxes. One thing I did mention to one person at eVocation is that I learned in therapy, particularly for people with anxiety or that get really high stress or high strung, if you kind of take a second to pause and do like a body scan and check, 9 times out of 10, if you're stressed, your tongue is like resting or pushed up against the roof of your mouth.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I find it in my shoulders.
Absolutely. Your shoulders get tensed up. But it's like if you check and it's like your tongue is like just resting up there. And it's like if you just relax it and like drop it down to the bottom. Yeah. And then like kind of
the bottom,
down, drop it to the bottom and just kind of scan.
My tongue
and just,
is
like,
at the bottom.
Your whole body, you can just feel everything just drop, and you're just like,
oh, you're right.
I was stressed out,
including my posture though. But it's good in a way,
Yeah. So that's a great one to reset too. But definitely the air does it for me. I wanted to go back to real quick to something that you said about the money too and the reinvesting. I think that as someone who has both incomes, where I have the corporate and the voiceover, so I'm not necessarily paying bills out of my voiceover income right now. That's what the corporate job is doing. So it's really easy to overspend and reinvesting.
Yes.
You know, because everything is somewhat extra, right? Like it could be paying off debt or whatever, but you still want to watch and make sure that you're getting an ROI from where you're spending your money. in your business and you're not just spending because you have it.
Right.
I got into that, and that's how I have like a million microphones and headphones. And I started looking at my numbers, and I was just like, all right, if I want to build this to a point where it is going to be my source of income, I've got to start making strategic decisions about where I'm making expenditures, just like businesses do, setting budgets for different categories so I can watch my spending, just make sure that's aligning with what I'm bringing in. So I want to bring that up.
Yeah. It's easy for us to forget to check those numbers. Yeah. Even myself, this is what I do full time. I'm not even talking about balancing one career against another. I find myself that I'm not looking at the numbers enough. But what's really cool, again, I say over and over and over again, the best investment I've ever made was my accountant. I have her on retainer, so she'll be doing monthly. She's the one that will alert me. By the way, you realize that you're spending so much per month on this subscription, or your income that came in last month was a little less than it was this time last year. So let's make some adjustments or whatnot, because she's also keeping track of my quarterly taxes that I have to pay. So that keeps me in check. So if you do not have somebody watching over you, looking at your numbers, and you're doing it yourself, remind yourself at least once a month, if not more than that. In reality, if you're active doing this full time, you should really be looking at your numbers once a week, if not every day, seeing what's going on, what's in and what's out, and just taking a brief look so that you're aware. I think that's important.
Yeah, I have a Google sheet, and I should be outsourcing to an accountant. I have somebody for taxes, but I'll get there. It's taken me some time. But I have this Google sheet where I'm looking at my average income per job, also the median. So that way, if I get like a whopper, and it's a 5-figure job, it's not throwing off my average. I can also see where I hit the median, because that tells me when it's time to raise my session minimum.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, like you said, year over year metrics. I'm looking at monthly, how much I brought in so that I can compare. I'm looking at quarterly averages of what I brought in. And I have all that automated. The calculations are in the Google sheet. So I'm not having to calculate this every time. Every time I put in a booking, it's calculating that based on what's in the other sheet. And showing me that number. And I just look at them from time to time. Super helpful.
So let's talk about mental balance and joy, right? Yeah. So a lot of people that are in their corporate jobs want to escape.
Yes.
Is that how it is with you? Are you at the point in your job where you're like, I got to get out? Because I was at that point where I am so stressed out. I need a change. I was becoming stagnant myself in my corporate job. And that is the worst thing for me. Just knowing my personality, it is the worst thing for me to remain stagnant and not grow. So I was like, I need a way out. I need to get out. And that escape was moving to California and then going into voiceover full time. What about you? Where's your mental state there?
I think I'm okay right now, but I do think that, especially since I've got a whole new obligation coming along here, it's definitely on the long range plan to move out of corporate and to focus on, I don't think I'll ever just do one thing, but kind of having voiceover and maybe something else that is my own personal endeavor. And I do think that you have to know what your plan is. Like, is this for short term? Or are you just trying to use this to build up some capital? Is it like a mid-range thing where you're building a career and maybe you're going to do voiceover after retirement or something like that? Or if you have a long-range plan where you're like, I'm going to have an exit strategy, I'm going to build voiceover to a point where it can sustain my lifestyle and I'm comfortable, and then I can leave my job. And that's more me. So I know, like, on the long-range sort of roadmap, I will eventually probably leave corporate and just do voiceover, because it's growing to the point where I'm going to have to at some point.
Right.
And knowing things like that, you have to prepare, right? You have to have balance in your approach. You have to start looking at your
plan.
debt. You have to plan. You reverse engineer how you're going to get out. Don't just be like, I'm tired of my job. Bye. I'm going to do voiceover and wing it. You're going to be miserable. And I don't want to be a starving artist.
Honestly, I'm so glad that you said that, because I have so many people that are like, I'm not happy at my job. I want to get out of my job and just quit and do voiceover full time. And I'm always like, okay, whoa. First of all, you want to make sure you've got a plan, because it takes a while to get established in voiceover unless you're a prodigy. And there's very few of those out there. And it's with any good business that you are growing as an entrepreneur. They used to say 5 years. I'm like, make it closer to 10 years. You know what I mean? That it's going to take for you to really see a good ROI, and maybe like this will be your way of life. You can support yourself. I'm not going to say it takes 10 years for everybody, but I had a certain standard way of life that I like to live. You need to make a certain amount of money to do that. And so for me, that did not happen right away. It took me many years of growth. And thankfully, I had a financial cushion, which was what I had put in place. And my husband also, who was working at a job, I was able to get healthcare benefits. So important, healthcare, to have those benefits. And as a matter of fact, even now, I'm always telling my husband, I don't care what you do, just get me my health benefits. So I'll make money if you want. Just get me health benefits because that's a huge, huge part.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because it's not just about the dollars that you're bringing in. Yes, absolutely. The benefits that you lose after you leave corporate, whether that's health, dental, maybe vision insurance. Right now I'm carrying that for our family because my partner is also freelance.
Yep.
So if you know that that's not going to be an option for you, either planning for that expense
Yes.
or getting enough union work where you can qualify for the union health insurance. And that's kind of where I'm at. Looking at now that you're not going to have a 401k, what are you going to do for retirement? Are you going to open, SEPs? Are you going to look at, individual IRAs? So kind of having that for yourself, just looking at all of what you're going to lose and coming up with a contingency plan for that for when you're on your own or just being willing to do without it. You have to consider more than just the dollars, the taxes, the fact that now the income that you're going to have from Voiceover is not only going to support your business and you're paying your own taxes, but you're going to have to reinvest in your business as well. So you have to make enough to cover all of that.
And support the family.
Yeah.
Right. So whatever you have to do. And I remember those first years when I made that decision. Before I quit, and I say this all the time, I said to my husband, you're going to have to make 1.5 times what you make now. See if you can get a transfer to California, but we're going to have to make 1.5 times because I'm going to quit my job. And I'm going to go full-time into voiceover, and you can't depend on my salary after that happens. I had money put away in savings, but again, we're talking about a move across the country. That was expensive. Buying a new home, that was expensive. Even though we sold our home, we were buying a home that was brand new, so we did have to invest a little bit as well. And it just was something that we had to plan out. I said, make sure that you can be guaranteed this salary. And then, it worked out and we moved. And then unfortunately, my husband was laid off 9 months after we got here. And then people said, when are you moving back? And I said, no, we're not moving back. So we made it work. But you still have to prepare for those unexpected things that happen. And so an exit strategy is important. Make sure that you have some money put aside that can support you in the event that you need to live off it for a year, I would say. That is so important. And know that it's going to take time to build up your career in voiceover. I mean, at least give it 5 years. If you're at the point where you're working full-time and you're doing part-time voiceover and you're making a considerable amount in voiceover, doing that, first of all, congratulations, because I know how difficult it was for me when I was working full-time, but I had to be on site, right, at my job. It was very difficult for me to make any money at voiceover because I couldn't audition easily because I was away from my studio. Now, I think if you have the luxury of working from home, that's a whole lot easier. But still, even if you can work from home, build in an evolution of here's transitioning from full-time to maybe consider your skill set and you can then be a part-time consultant in it while you're doing voiceover as well.
Absolutely.
And so therefore, you're kind of compensating for the time it takes for you to build up the voiceover business while still utilizing your current skills in a consultant fashion, in a part-time fashion that can supplement your living expenses and or whatnot, your investment in your voiceover for the time being. I think that is something very important to put in place. And do not, obviously, anybody listening to this podcast, do not think that voiceover is the easy job that you can just do from home. That just scares me when I do consults and I hear people, they're like, well, I got laid off from my job and I want to do voiceover. And that just scares me because it's not that simple, obviously. That transition takes time. There has to be an investment. And it amazes me again how many people don't have money to invest in voiceover to make it a sustainable career.
That's one thing, too, that I always kind of bring up. And it might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion, but I think that you should have a balanced approach when you're looking at exiting to not just have savings, but to also go ahead and build up a portfolio of credit that's available to you. Because this is a high investment industry, right? To be able to be in voiceover, you're constantly having to either spend money on equipment or, have subscriptions for connections or get training, conferences, all these things, they do help you grow. So it's not like a one-time outlay.
Yeah.
You do need to have some money for when technology fails and you have to replace it. It's easier for you to get approved for credit while you have that W-2 income. So you don't have to use it, but kind of have lines of credit available so that if the sky falls down and you don't have enough savings to take you through that whole period, you have another fallback plan. It's like, have your plan A, B, C, D.
That's a great idea. Yeah. That's a great idea. And also, I want to mention on that line, consider if you're going to move Loki into a new home. By the way, they don't look upon freelancers or people who are self-employed very highly when you want to buy a new home for a mortgage loan. And I found that out very firsthand when I moved here 2.5 years ago. And I've been established in the business, but I had to prove over and over and over again, here I made this much this year, here are my bank records, here, have it all. We can't afford this. And it just was painful. It was painful. So if you need to make a move while you work at a job.
The banks highly favor W-2 work.
They do. Yeah.
So take advantage of that and then make your exit.
And then make your exit. That's actually a really good strategy plan. It's not that it can't be done because I did it, but you've got to basically hand over every piece of documentation that looks at your business and shows your income. And then you have to make sure that you can define where that income came from. You cannot just transfer $10,000 from PayPal into your bank account and say that it was for voiceover work. They're going to want to know, really, where did that come from? And it's that type of a thing. Any large deposits into your bank account, you need to account for those. And if you say they're from your business, you got to be ready to show the paperwork. That is just part of the reality. And especially now, it's crazy out there in the housing market. It's expensive. So it's going to make it that much harder even.
Cars too, like the other major purchase, buying a car. And that's why even if you do have W-2 income now, go ahead and get in the habit of keeping meticulous records, not just for taxes, but so that when you're in this situation and maybe you're a year into your only freelance career, you've left your job and they want 2 years of history, you're going to have to be able to show everything that happened over the past year in VoiceOver plus that W-2, which is going to be easy, but get in the habit now so that when those come up, you're able to really just show it and, you want this? Fine. Yep, I can show you. No problem.
Yeah.
Because they want to make sure it's not coming from illicit sources.
Exactly.
Right? So,
exactly. Money laundering. That's it. I'm like, what? Look, where do they think it's coming from? Well, you could be laundering money. I'm like, oh, that didn't even occur to me. So I don't have a criminal mind there. But anyways, your last piece of advice for balancing everything so successfully the way that you do to the bosses out there, what would it be?
Oh, man. I would just have to say it's probably multi-pronged, but know your plan. Know what it is that you're trying to do with VoiceOver. If it's just something that you want to do on the side, that is okay, but you need to know that and not kind of purport like you're trying to build something long-term. Or if you are trying to build long-term, start making long-term plans. Start making steps to get your financial house in order to prepare your family for this change. Don't want an emotional whim because you're tired of it. Grin and bear it, and, just and know what you're doing and why you're doing it and who you're doing it for. And in the meantime, just set boundaries for yourself. Take care of yourself. Know that you're not going to be able to get into everything, but just know that you having both is also an asset. You're able to double dip for retirement, do a SEP and get your 401k. You're able to have another capital source to invest in your business. So just be patient with yourself. That was a lot of advice in one point.
That was great, though. That was sage advice. Thank you so much, Erikka. You are an inspiration for sure.
Thank you, Anne.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, bosses. So as individuals, it can seem hard to make a big impact, but as a group, we can contribute to the growth of our communities in ways that we never thought possible. And you can find out more at 100voiceswhocare.org to learn how you can make a difference. Also, big shout out to our sponsor, IPDTL. You too can connect like bosses, like Erikka and I, and find out more at ipdtl.com. You guys have an amazing week, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Join us next week for another edition of VO Boss with your host, Ann Ganguza. And take your business to the next level. Sign up for our mailing list at voboss.com and receive exclusive content, industry revolutionizing tips and strategies, and new ways to rock your business like a boss. Redistribution with permission, coast-to-coast connectivity via IPDTL.